So this lecture burst deals with the trait theory of personality, and the trait perspective looks at personality as having dimensions, basically all of our characteristics that are stable over time. And so those traits constitute your personality. An example of those traits might be honest, dependable, moody, impulsive. These are all different kinds of traits that can be seen as a constellation of durable dispositions and consistent ways that we behave that make up traits and constitute our personality. The first to introduce this idea of traits was Gordon Allport, and then after him, Cattell. The two were sort of pioneers in personality trait theory. And they made the earliest attempts to list and describe all sorts of traits that people could have. So Allport listed 200 traits and believed that they're actually embedded within our nervous system, that we were primed to respond biologically to these traits. And then Cattell reduced that number to between 16 and 23 more unique traits. And he used a statistical method called factor analysis to do that. So he basically took all of the 200 Allport used and said, well, there's some overlap. A lot of the traits Allport described, you could have 5 that were really describing the same kind of thing. And so he took it and reduced it down in that way. And there's where we got their theories. Cattell talked about surface traits and source traits. Surface traits are like those found by Allport. They represent the personality characteristics easily seen by other people, whereas source traits are those more basic traits that underlie the surface traits. So a surface trait is easily seen by others. It could be like shyness or being quiet, avoiding crowds. That's something that's easily observed by others. Whereas the source trait might be introversion. It's a trait in which people withdraw and causes them to be shy, be quiet, avoid crowds. So we kind of put them into those two different categories. Modern trait theories describe 5 basic components of personality, and this came from Costa and McCrae. They coined the big 5, which are the 5 main personality traits, being openness, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism. I always memorized it by the acronym OCEAN. Openness is defined as a person's willingness to try new things and be open to new experiences. Some people love trying new things, going new places, taking a new drive. They're very open to new friendships, new groups, new hobbies, and others are very closed off. They don't like new things. They don't like trying new things or going to new places. They like comfort. They like sameness. They like habit. So that would be an individual on either end of that openness spectrum. You're either very open or you're not, or you're somewhere in between. Conscientiousness refers to a person's organization and motivation, drive to get work done. Extroversion is actually a term that Carl Jung used. If you remember him as one of the Neo-Freudians, he believed that all people could be divided into 2 personality types, extroverts and introverts. So extroverts are outgoing and sociable, whereas introverts are more solitary and dislike being the center of attention. They like to withdraw. They like their quiet space. They like to kind of do their own thing. They're not really seeking out a lot of people. They're not out making friendships and forming relationships. They're comfortable just with maybe the couple of people that they know, and that's it. That would be more of an introvert. Agreeableness refers to a person's basic emotional style. How agreeable am I? Do I tend to get along good with others? If someone points out something in me that's dissatisfactory, Am I willing to adjust that, or do I get defensive and ignore that? That would be disagreeable. So you could be on either end of those spectrum. And then neuroticism refers to the emotional instability or stability of a person. A neurotic individual is a worrier, is always worrying about the next thing, can't relax, can't do anything that would be reducing of their anxiety. So a neurotic individual is often very anxious, can struggle with anxiety, even in relative times of stability. A neurotic individual would be looking for the next thing to worry about, and unnecessary worry, really. Not worry that makes sense. Not like, oh, I lost my job and now I'm worried about it. A neurotic individual is always like, oh my gosh, I must be sick, or this must be happening, or, so they're always sort of looking for that. So those are the 5 basic ones. And if we look at them like this, and we look at them pitted against one another, you can see that someone who's high in openness is very creative, very artistic, very curious and imaginative. Somebody who ranks low on openness is very conventional, down to earth, non-conforming, not open to new ideas and change, likes sameness, likes routine, doesn't like to kind of go outside of the box necessarily. These are all based off of Cattell's 16 source traits. And so 16 was kind of a lot, and these 5 are a little bit easier to understand. But they're captured from hundreds of characteristics, basically boiling down to these 5 dimensions, of which individuals are going to lie on the spectrum somewhere, right? So if we look also then, I talked about each of these, so I'm going to let you guys kind of look at these and explore these 5 a little bit more, in terms of what would be high and what would be low. But you'll get a better sense of how that works as you move through those. Thoughts on trait perspective is that we do have traits, but the situation also matters. This is the trait situation interaction. That given a situation, that's going to influence the way in which a trait is expressed. So, we could be in many different settings or situations, and that's going to dictate maybe what traits come out. And there's been cross-cultural evidence to support this 5-factor model, these five key pieces of our personality, in many cultures. So we've got some good evidence there. And that this plays a role in things like child rearing, and heredity also plays a role in factoring into what those 5 personality factors might be. Okay, I'm going to skip that for now. How do we assess traits? So how would we measure a person's traits? We do so through personality inventories. They're basically long questionnaires, often with true-false questions or agree-disagree type of statements or items, designed to gauge a wide range of feelings and behaviors that assess several traits all at once. So here are some different kinds of personality inventories that exist: the Neo-PI, Myers-Briggs, and the MMPI. I'm going to have you guys taking a Myers-Briggs type assessment this week and putting it into your discussion. So that should be fun. But again, these are all questionnaire-based inventories where the person is responding to questions, and they're all based in that 5-factor model, those 5 big dimensions, except for the Myers-Briggs is more based on Jung's personality types, and based off the 16 traits that Cattell talked about. All of these inventories have validity scales built into them. They're well designed, and they're intended to indicate whether or not a person taking the inventory is responding honestly. So responses to certain items on the test will indicate if people are trying to make themselves look better or worse than they are, for example. And then certain items are repeated throughout the test in a slightly different way so that anyone trying to fake the test will have difficulty responding consistently to those items. The MMPI is a very long version of a personality inventory. It's got over 600 items, and it's often used in employment settings like the FBI and different law enforcement agencies, military, and it's very comprehensive. It's a very accurate indicator of personality, and so you can see why those types of agencies might be interested in knowing what a person's traits are. Will they be able to handle pressure? Will they be able to handle emotional distress? What might they do? And so they're very good predictors for those employers to use. Here are the big five in terms of how they map onto the Myers-Briggs. And you're going to see this when you take the little test that you're going to do this week on Myers-Briggs, Myers-Briggs type, where you're going to see the extroversion, introversion. Their form of openness is sensing and intuition. Sensing is a person who appreciates facts and reality. Intuition is a person who appreciates possibilities and potential. That would be the big five factor of openness, so it's similar to that. Similar to agreeableness on the big five is the Myers-Briggs thinking and feeling. A thinking person is more logic and truth. A feeling person is more values and relationships, empathy. And then similar to conscientiousness is judgment and perception. Judgment is the well-structured person, very, organized, and perception is the more go with the flow, let loose, whatever happens, happens type of person. So the big five, right, is extroversion/introversion, openness, agreeableness, and conscientiousness. And what we see is the yellow here in the Myers-Briggs is what's similar to the big five. So you're going to be taking a Myers-Briggs type test. And then, assertive is like the neuroticism on the big five. Am I self-assured, even-tempered, resistant to stress, or am I turbulent, self-conscious, sensitive to stress, perfectionistic, eager to improve? Okay, so just go back through those slides. The yellow is the Myers-Briggs trait type, and the red is the big five trait type. You can see how they map on to one another. You guys are going to be taking this 16 personalities test in the discussion. I'll talk about that in the week's overview for week 12. You're going to be finding your type and seeing where you fit and what your strengths and weaknesses are. And then you'll see what category you belong to. Are you an analyst? Are you a diplomat? And within the analyst, there's a type. And I can't make this bigger. I wish I could. But you're going to get a type label, like FMPJ or whatever. If I scroll down, I think I have it here. ENFJ, ESFJ, ENFP. These are all types. So Myers-Briggs type indicator, that's MBTI. There's 16 different types that can be made up. Here's 8 and here's 8. You fit into one main category, right? So an analyst, a diplomat, a sentinel, or an explorer. And then you can even further break it down in those, what type within those are you. And then it's going to give you your little acronym, and it's going to tell you who you are. Here's kind of how people in the population fall. As you can see, ESTJ and ISTJ are the most popular personality types, whereas the INFJ, and the INTP and the INFP are less popular. So have fun with that, and you'll see what kind of type you are, and I look forward to hearing all about it in the discussion.